Found out my wife's affair left me raising another man's child. Now she's begging me to help, but I've closed that chapter. I, 32M, am divorcing my wife, 33F, after finding out that my son, 5M, is not mine. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I found out that my wife cheated on me 6 years ago. The way I found out is that her sister told me after I went to visit her to find out how the delivery of her first child was. She confessed to me that 6 years ago, my wife told her that she slept drunk with her best friend. In her words, my wife was very sorry. At the time she told me this, I was with my son, and immediately after leaving her house, I went to take a paternity test with him, fearing the worst. A week later, I got the results, and my fears came true. My son is not mine. For some reason, I began to see the boy differently, more as an acquaintance than a son. With proof in hand, I confronted my wife at night when the child was sleeping. She asked me who told me, and I simply told her that it was none of her business. Although obviously, it won't take long for her to connect the dots that it was her sister. Well, that is not my problem now. Regardless of that, I asked her for a divorce, which is now in process. She was devastated and swore to me more than once that nothing happened with anyone again, that she has been faithful to me in body and soul since then. I held back the urge to insult her to avoid complications during the divorce process, not believing a word she said, mostly blaming the alcohol instead of taking the blame herself. After talking about it, she threatened me, saying that she would demand full custody of the child. I was so annoyed at that moment that I told her, "Fine, I don't want anything to do with something that isn't mine. You keep the child, and I'll keep the dogs." We have 2 dogs that we adopted as puppies, and they are now both 8 years old. After hearing my words, she tried to convince me to help her take care of the child, saying that I am his father. At that moment, I exploded. I was so angry, and I had held back so much that I just yelled at her to take her bastard and get out. A week has passed since then, and I am at home. The house is in my name because it was a gift from my parents. She went to her parents' house with her child, and she hasn't called me since. She left with everything and the half-asleep child when I yelled at her, especially since it was the first time I truly yelled at her. It clearly affected her. I talked to my parents, and my dad told me that I did the right thing and that I shouldn't be raising something that is not of my blood, and I agree with him. However, the pain is still there. My younger brother suggested I write here to distract myself. I'm currently seeing a therapist 3 times a week, who told me that I've already taken the first step, which was to leave behind what causes me pain. It just hurts to know that my family no longer exists. As for why my sister-in-law told me everything, she said she felt guilty seeing me always happy with my son, knowing that he might not be mine, and that our visit triggered her guilt to the point where she couldn't keep it to herself anymore. I don't know how true that is. I just know that right now, I feel tremendous hatred for my wife and a mix of pain and resentment toward the child. But I know it's just a matter of time to move forward. I just hope the divorce goes smoothly. We have separate finances and properties, and if she really asks for child support, I have proof that the child is not mine. According to my lawyer, that's more than enough if she tries to pursue legal action for that. My therapist also recommended that I avoid seeing both her and the child, that regardless of the child's feelings, I need to prioritize my own well-being first. The child is no longer my responsibility, and the sooner I accept that, the better. Sorry for any misspellings. English is not my first language. Update. Well, 2 weeks have passed since my first post and 3 weeks since everything happened. Not many relevant things have occurred, but here's a short summary. Approximately 3 days after my first post, my ex came to my house and asked to come inside. I went out and met her at the door. I told her that she wasn't going to set foot in my house while I'm there, and if she had anything to say, it would have to be at the door. Well, she practically begged me to take her son back, saying that if I want to cut off all contact with her, that's fine, and that she deserves it. But she can't raise a child alone, that she has a job, and raising him by herself is going to destroy her dream of becoming a notary. She works in public records and is about 2 years away from running for a judiciary position to get her own notary. I tried to explain to her in the calmest way possible that my therapist recommended I cut off all contact with both of them, and asked her to please leave my door before I lost my temper. I told her that I love the child but don't want to take my anger out on an innocent, especially considering that this innocent is the product of her inability to keep her legs closed. I said this last part with some anger, but I never raised my voice because we were on the street. I told her that the child deserves better and that it's now her responsibility to provide that for him. I don't know how she's going to do it, but that's no longer my problem. After that, we talked a little more. She resisted the urge to cry and make a scene because once again, we were in the street, and she's always been someone who cared about what people said about her. The last thing she asked me was if she could at least see the dogs. I told her no, that it would be best for them to get used to her absence. Seeing her again after so long would only make them overly excited. After that, she just nodded and left. 2 days after that, she called me when she received the divorce papers. My mistake was answering the phone because for about 30 minutes, she was yelling. I eventually managed to say that the papers should have the number of my civil lawyer, so she could call her if she had any questions. After that, I silenced her number. She hasn't come to my house since then, nor has she tried to call again. That same day, I contacted a friend I made during my master's degree and asked her to go out. She agreed, and well, we've been seeing each other since then. Finally, last Friday, I asked her to be in an exclusive relationship, and she accepted. She stayed over at my house a few nights, and she already knows my dogs and adores them, which I appreciate because I couldn't start something with someone who doesn't accept my pets. We're currently taking things slow. She knows about the drama I'm dealing with involving my ex and the child, and she respects my decision. She asked me if I'd ever have contact with the child again, and I told her maybe when he's old enough to understand my decisions, but I don't expect it to interfere with my life in the future. She just nodded and was glad that I'm putting myself first during this process. Maybe this took a little longer than I expected, but this is the summary of what's happened these past days, and well, many people have been asking me for an update, so here it is.